Samadhyamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Udiraye Ashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavatir Naishtike Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Namahom Shapadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shmati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravane Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunvadi Paschachade Shatarane Mukham Karoti Vachanam Pangam Langyate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinataranam Paramanandam Madhavam. It was interesting that I was reading today that the first mantra that Srila Prabhupada gave to his disciples was the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And the second mantra that he gave was Om Agyantimirandasya. So just emphasizing on the need to take shelter of the spiritual master. So thank you for joining. We'll resume our discussion from the third canto, chapter 5, verse 29. So this is the ongoing discussion on the explanation by Maitreya in terms of the creation of the material universe. Tatvad vikurnavad tattvam vijayanta karyakaran kartatma bhutendriya manomanaya vaikarikas tejasascha tamasaschityaham trida. Mahatattva, or the great causal truth, transforms into false ego, which is manifested in three phases: cause, effect, and the doer. All such activities are on the mental plane and are based on the material elements, gross senses, and mental speculation. The false ego is represented in three different modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. So in these set of verses, the successive evolution of the material elements and the material universe is being described. So previously it was mentioned that when the Mahatattva manifests, then in the mode of goodness, it manifests as chitta or consciousness. In the mode of passion, it manifests as sutra tattva. In the mode of ignorance, it manifests as ahankar. Now, ahankar, which is the Mahatattva in the mode of ignorance, is further acted upon by the modes, and it splits into three based on the mode that it is acting on. It's been acted upon by. So Can you hear me? Because I'm getting this message that I'm being signed out. I'm still there in this.
We can hear you, Prabhu.
Okay. I'm getting this pop-up again and again that you've been signed out. Okay. So now what is being explained is the action of the three modes on the ahankar, which is Mahatattva in the mode of tamas. So what I'm going to do in the interest of time is summarize it for you. This is going to be explained in the next 3 verses. And basically, there's a table. Prem Kishore Prabhu, you sent out the document I sent to you, right?
No, Prabhu.
Did you get it? You have.
I do. 1 second, I'll open it.
Okay, no worries. So the document I have this table in there, which is easier for me to summarize. So ahankar in the mode of goodness, sattva, is called vaikarika, and it represents adideva. The action, in terms of action, it is the kartar or the doer. It manifests as the mind, and it is represented by mana, the mind, and the devas. Ahankar in the mode of rajas is called taijasa, and it is represented by the adhyatmic purusha. It is the cause, karan, represented by the senses, indriya, and it manifests as senses for speculative knowledge and fruitive activities. Then ahamkar in the mode of tamas represents as the adhibhuta purush, and it is manifested as karya or effect. It appears as the gross elements, the bhutas, and is manifested as the sense objects, the tanmatras, and the gross elements. So this is the summarization of verse 30, 31, and 32. So let me see if there is any specific. For ahamkar in the mode of rajas, that appears as the senses. So one may argue that the senses are actually participating in knowledge gathering. So they should be considered as sattva. But in the verse, Maitreya uses the word eva to indicate that no, it is certainly only used in the gathering of senses. So the senses generate sensation. The mind processes these sensations to generate knowledge. So ahamkar in the mode of tamas is the cause of the sense objects, such as the sound from which ether comes, and sound from which the form of the Lord arose in the form of ether. So Srila Prabhupada mentions that all the material creations take place from subtle to gross. The entire universe is developed in that manner. Similarly, all other gross elements also develop from subtle to gross. Sound developed into sky, touch developed into air, form developed into fire, taste developed into water, and smell developed into earth. So, so in the document that I sent, I have established this cause and effect of the generation of the gross elements from subtle. So the way it is explained is that sky, which is ether, has the quality of sound. Now, when sky is acted upon by three things: the Lord's glance, time, Kal Shakti, and Maya Shakti, then it gets converted into air. Now, air has the quality of sky, which is sound, and also now has the quality of touch. Now, sky and air, they are acted upon by these three things: the Lord's glance, Kal Shakti, and Maya Shakti, and are converted into light, which has the quality of sound and touch, which the sky had, and now also has the quality of form. Now, the light that has been generated mixes with sky and air and is acted upon by the Lord's energies and produces water, which, in addition to sound, touch, and form, now has the quality of taste. Now, the water now mixes with the sky, air, and light, is acted upon by the Lord's potency, and generates earth, which, in addition to sound, touch, form, and taste, now has the quality of smell. So this is explained by Srila Prabhupada in the purport of verse 32. Okay. So I'm doing it a little differently this time, just to save time, and also because these verses we have already done. This process we have already done in 2.5. So you already are familiar with this. But let me see if you have any questions with respect to what I spoke. Okay. So we can move on to just 1 minute. So we've covered 33, we've covered verse 34, covered verse 35, 36, 37, okay, so we are now at verse 38. So let me read this verse and we can discuss this. Etadeva kala Vishnu kalamayam salinginaha nanatvad svakriyanisaha prochu pranjalayo vibhuhum. The controlling deities of all the above mentioned physical elements are empowered expansions of Lord Vishnu. They are embodied by eternal time under the external energy, and they are his parts and parcel. Because they're entrusted with different functions of universal duties and were unable to perform them, they offered fascinating praise to the Lord as possible. So this verse introduces what is oh, I lost the Zoom screen. Okay, here it is. Sorry. So this verse introduces the what are known as the elemental devas. And honestly speaking, Prabhupada doesn't speak a lot about them. There isn't much discussion about them, but they are different from demigods. Because in this verse and in the very last verse of this chapter, they are referred to, or the position is referred to more incident. For some reason, the assumption is made that one knows. Like if you speak about humans, then we are completely aware of what the position is. So not much effort is given in describing the position. But here we can see that the controlling deities of all the above mentioned physical elements. These are the various elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether, the various senses that were generated. They're empowered expansions of Lord Vishnu, and they're embodied by eternal time under the external energy, and there is parts and parcels. So somewhat of their position is given, that they are Shakti Veshavatars of the Lord. They are jivas, they're conditioned jivas, and they will admit to that themselves later on. And they have the position of being the administrators of the universe. Now, almost all this can also be applied to devas like Indra and Agni and Vayu, but in the timeline of the creation, Brahma has not been created yet. So only after Brahma is created, then his mental sons are created, then Prajapati Kashyap is created, and then Adityas are there, and then the demigods come. So they're all dependent on Brahma. So these devas seem to belong to a different category, and they're created or manifested. They're Shakti Desh avatars of Lord Vishnu. In the purport, it's mentioned that it appears that Maya Devi or these devas, they're conspiring to create like a quagmire, a trap for conditioned jivas. So they are getting together all these elements. It's like when at least in India happens when children go to a shop, and then some shopkeeper will come, hawker will come, and he'll start showing the toys to the children. And the child will start crying, and the parents will be forced to buy it. So it almost looks like all this arrangement is being made to tempt the poor jivas. But the point that is being made over here is that it is because of the desire of the jivas that all this is being done. So if you look at it, if you take a step back and look at it, this whole process of Krishna becoming Mahavishnu and then expanding Garbhadakshay, Shodakshay Vishnu, Maya Devi, the Virat Roop, these elements, they're all being done for only one reason, which is to fulfill the desires of the conditioned souls to enjoy separately from Krishna. There's no other reason. Krishna takes no pleasure from it. We have already established in the previous verse that he does not depend on it. He is completely independent. So the only reason it's being there is because of the desires of the jivas. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that the position of the devas is that of devotees who have been given key responsibilities to assist him in the management of the material world. They're actually advanced Vaishnavas, which will become evident in the prayers below. Verse 39. Deva uchuhu namanam te dev. Different meat. Namanamate deva padarvindam prapantapopasamatapartram yanmulaketa yato anajashoru samsara dukham bahirukshpanti. The demigod said, "O Lord, your lotus feet are like an umbrella for the surrendered souls, protecting them from all the miseries of material existence. All the sages under that shelter throw off all material miseries. We therefore offer our respectful obeisances unto your lotus feet." So the demigods are going to offer very sweet and fascinating prayers. And the focus of these prayers will be the lotus feet of the Lord. So it's important to know these prayers because they focus on taking shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. So from verse 39, which is this verse to 43, the devas will glorify those who take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord and will glorify the potency of the lotus feet of the Lord. Then in two verses, 44 and 45, they will lament for those who do not take shelter. And after that, they will pray for empowerment. So having established themselves at the shelter of the lotus feet, they will ask for empowerment to assist Krishna in the creation of the universe. So they use an analogy over here that your lotus feet are like an umbrella. And an umbrella, it gives shelter from both scorching sun and pouring rain. So Krishna's lotus feet, they offer shelter to those who are overwhelmed by the material miseries in the mode of passion and ignorance. Krishna has already explained to Brahma in the 9th chapter, 2nd canto, that this is what his magnanimity is, that he gives shelter. And he will explain it again in the 9th chapter, 3rd canto. So the effect of the shelter is that the samsara dukham, the material miseries, are anjasa. So they are anjasa means completely, and utkshapanti bahi, that they are forcibly ejected far away. Uru. And Prabhupada says that others who are engaged in transcendental activities in different way cannot do so. For them, it is very difficult. Vishwanath Chakravarti says Uru also means as root. So the point he makes is that one who takes shelter, for them samsara dukham is uprooted. The other processes of transcendence, they may trim them, or they may even cut them down, but they cannot uproot them. They will grow again. But this process of by which one takes shelter of the Lord, these material miseries are uprooted. And Prabhupada says that this is the opinion of the demigods, who are not only well versed in the Vedic knowledge, but are also seers of the past, present, and future. And their opinions are valuable because of their greatness. They have been authorized to hold positions in the affairs of universal management. They have been appointed by the Lord as his confidential servants. So Prabhupada is making the point that these are not ordinary people. These are exalted Vaishnavas who are making the statement. One should take it with gravity. Verse 40. Tataryadasmin bhavisha jivas taptrena bihita na sharma atman labante bhagavam stavangari chayam savidyam matashrayema. O Father, O Lord, O Personality of Godhead, the living entities in the material world can never have any happiness because they're overwhelmed by the three kinds of miseries. Therefore, they take shelter of the shade of your lotus feet, which are full of knowledge, and we also thus take shelter of them. So the three kinds of miseries are the Adhyatmic, Adidevic, and Adibhotik, which are arising from the mind, body, and nature, or the demigods. And the root of these three miseries is avidya, or ignorance of one's position. So one who takes shelter is described as savidyam. Because the savidyam destroys avidya, then just like when the root of a plant is cut, the plant dries away. So avidya is the root of these three kleshas. And when avidya is cut with savidyam, the three kleshas disappear. Same point was made in 127, where it is said that by rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead Shri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. And Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita 10:10 that to those who are constantly devoted to me, serving me with love, I give them the understanding by which they can come to me. So they're pointing to the same theme that when one takes shelter of Krishna, then avidyam is replaced by vidya. And that vidya then causes the kleshas to disappear. So the point is made is that this knowledge exists only in the lotus feet of the Lord and nowhere else. So this gyan is obtained at Bhagavan Tavangari Chayam. When one takes a shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Otherwise, it is not possible. And Vishwanath Chakravarti says that one should understand that this gyan is practiced as an anga of bhakti. So the verse does not glorify jnanis, but glorify devotees who understand Sambandha Gyan, who understand their position with respect to Krishna. Abhideya Gyan, understand the process by which they can establish that relationship. So that Gyan is existing as an anga of bhakti. Okay, verse 41. Marganti yatte mukhapadmanidesh chanda suparne rishiyo vivikte yasyagamarshod saridvarayaha padam padam tirtha pada prapanna. The lotus feet of the Lord are by themselves the shelter of all places of pilgrimage. The great, clear-minded sages, carried by the wings of the Vedas, always search after the nest of the lotus feet, lotus-like face. Some of them surrender to your lotus feet at every step by taking shelter of the best of rivers, the Ganges, which can deliver one from all sinful reactions. So this is what Prabhupada mentioned, that the Devas, they speak eloquently, and they use different metaphors to glorify. So here they're using the metaphor of the birds and the nest, and the analogy is explained in 4 different ways. So the first is that so they talk about the fact that the clear-minded sages, carried by the wings of the Vedas, always search for the nest of the lotus-like face. So essentially, the root analogy is that the birds, they seek out their nest. So one way to understand this analogy is that it's been known that people who are homeless or who are traveling and looking for shelter, they find shelter by following the birds in the evening, knowing that the birds are returning to the nests on the trees. So they take shelter under the trees by following the birds. So in this analogy, the birds are compared to the sages, and the nest is compared to Krishna. So the sages who are wise in the Vedas take shelter of the nest of Krishna. And sincere devotees who are tired of the material existence, they follow these sages. Just like the travelers, the weary travelers follow the birds to the trees, the sincere devotees, they follow the sages, and they too get shelter of the Lord. Second analogy, understanding of the analogy is that the words of the Vedas are like birds that fly far and wide, which means that the Vedas speak about many topics. But ultimately, the birds will return to their nest. Ultimately, all the words in the Vedas will point to the essence of Krishna Bhakti. So those who study the Vedas with faith will ultimately reach the conclusion of the Vedas, which is Krishna Bhakti. Third explanation, that the Vedas emanate from Krishna. So the Vedas are like the birds that are emanating from the resting place, which is Krishna's mouth. Those who follow the Vedas will ultimately reach Krishna. And the fourth, the swans are known to nest in the lotus flowers. So Krishna's mouth is like a lotus, and his Paramhamsa devotees take shelter there in the words and the instructions of Krishna. Similar to the second one, slightly different. So the acharyas just, they delve deeper into it. Now, in addition to following, whether it's following the Vedas or following the devotees, the demigods also speak about yet another ladder to Krishna in the verse, right? So they say that some of them surrender to your lotus feet at every step by taking shelter of the best of the rivers, the Ganges. And Prabhupada mentions that this statement, it talks about, so the first statement talked about the mercy of Krishna, that whether through the Vedas or through the sages, he's reaching out and attracting the conditioned souls. In this case, he's not even waiting for them to come back to him. So the river Ganges flows, and anybody, anywhere, I guess not anywhere, but anyone can go to the banks of the river Ganges and take bath over there and get purification. So Prabhupada mentioned that this means that the Lord is so kind that he has spread the river Ganges throughout the universe, so that by taking bath, everyone can get released from the reactions of sins. And then he said there are many rivers in the world which are able to evoke one sense of God consciousness simply by bathing in them. And river Ganges is the chief amongst them. Later he said that even Sripad Shankaracharya recommended that a little knowledge in Bhagavad Gita and the drinking of a little quantity of Ganges water can save one from the punishment of Yamraj. Okay, next verse. Yad Shraddhaya Shrutvatya cha Bhaktya Samyamya Samjyamane Hridaye Avadhaya Jnanena Vairagya Balena Dhira Vrajema Tatte Angri Sarojapitham. Simply by hearing about your lotus feet with eagerness and devotion, and by meditating upon them within the heart, one at once becomes enlightened with knowledge. And on the strength of detachment, one becomes pacified. Therefore, we must therefore take shelter of the sanctuary of your lotus feet. So, once again, glorification of Angri Sarojpitham, the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. And the Devas are saying that this process is superior to any other process. So they say, Jnanena Vairagya Balena Dhira, that a person who has become wise, a dhira, by jnanena, by realization of what? Of the sweet taste of Krishna, and a concomitant vairagya balena, and a concomitant distaste for everything else, will attain perfection. So the point is made that there is no need to waste time in searching the length and the breadth of the Vedas. So even though, so one interpretation of the analogy was that even though the Vedas will ultimately nest at Krishna's lotus feet or his lotus mouth, but there is no need to do that. Because simply by taking shelter, these two things will happen. That Gyan and Vairagya. Gyan is Krishna Gyan, knowledge about Krishna. And Vairagya is detachment from the material world. So one will make advancement. And Prabhupada says that the two essentials of self-realization, knowledge and detachment, become manifest very quickly if one performs devotional service to the lotus feet of the Lord. The word dhira is very significant in this connection. A person who is not disturbed, even in the presence of cause of disturbances, is called dhira. And then Prabhupada gives the example of Yamunacharya, who says that since my heart has been overwhelmed by the devotional service of Lord Krishna, I cannot even think of sex life. And if thoughts of sex come upon me, I at once feel disgust. Then he says, a devotee of the Lord becomes an elevated dhira by the simple process of meditating in eagerness on the lotus feet of the Lord. So this is an important point Prabhupada is making, that Gyan and Vairagya, they appear on their own. So the primary process is taking shelter with eagerness to the lotus feet of the Lord. And the reciprocation is that Gyan and Vairagya, they manifest. Prabhupada later on also mentions that from a practical perspective, Gyan and Vairagya manifest when one takes shelter of the spiritual master. So by following his instructions and then taking shelter of his lotus feet, a devotee can experience exactly the same results: knowledge, detachment, and Krishna Bhakti. Vishwasya janma sthiti samyamarthe kritaavatarasya padambujam te rajema sarve sharanam yadisha smritam prayachatya abhayam swapumsham. O Lord, you assume incarnations for creation, maintenance, and dissolution of the cosmic manifestation. And therefore we take shelter of your lotus feet because they always award remembrance and courage to your devotees. So why do the devotees need courage? Because at the time of dissolution, one may get bewildered. Now, the dissolution that is mentioned over here is the cosmic manifestation, but it can also be applied in a more pervasive way. So the dissolution could be at the time of death, which is the dissolution of one's body, or it could be the dissolution of happiness, or it could be the ongoing dissolution that happens because of the impact of time. So at that time, Krishna's lotus feet awards courage and remembrance for the creation and maintenance. So just this understanding that everything is coming from Krishna and is being maintained by Krishna, one gets abhayam, one becomes fearless to face the destruction, and the mercy to remember, smratam, that Krishna is the creator and the maintainer. And the Devas say that this is only available to Swapumsham. Swapumsham is the devotees of the Lord who have taken shelter of Pada Ambujam, the lotus feet of the Lord. It's not available to anybody else. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions that the creation is done by Brahma, the dissolution is done by Shiva, and the maintenance is done by Vishnu. And he says it's important to remember that all three of them depend on Krishna because he is the original personality of Godhead. And that is why the demigods refer only to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, not to anybody else. So they are not saying that remember Brahma for creation and Vishnu for maintenance and Shiva for destruction, but because all three of them are dependent on Krishna, so the demigods, they are pointing exclusively to taking shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Okay, let me pause here and see if there's any comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, this question was asked last time, but again from the clarity standpoint, where the devotees derive abhayam, right? There are many situations where I've seen, I don't know if I personally experienced it or not, due to avoid unavoidable situations, whether recently with Bhakti Swami or what happened with the disciples, and all, they couldn't, even though we do have this kind of a knowledge which gives, which should make more strong spiritually, but they do break down. So how do you take this into our sadhana growth?
That's a symptom of the softening of the heart. So as when we were discussing the nectar of devotion, one of the symptoms of the progression of bhakti is the heart softens, tears come to the eyes. In the Bhagavatam, Sukdev Goswami mentions that one who does not experience a softening of the heart, or who does not experience crying at the name of the Lord, should be considered to be steel-framed, have a steel-framed heart. So it's not coming out of bewilderment, it's coming out of attachment. So it's natural for devotees to be attached to other devotees. It is natural for them to feel separation. Like we were discussing Uddhav feeling separation from Krishna. And even though Uddhav is a Nitya Siddha, eternal associate of Krishna, but yet he was very deeply feeling separation, to the point that he was almost unable to control his senses. So devotees, and because of this knowledge, are not supposed to become stoic or hard-hearted, and somebody dies, they say, okay, he has another body, no worries about it. That attachment to the association is what is prized, and that absence of that is regretted. An example that is given is like when Abhimanyu was killed in the battlefield of Mahabharat. Then we see Arjun displaying all the symptoms of being one who was super attached, very angry, grieving, takes a vow for revenge. But his service doesn't stop. He continues with his service. Krishna had given him the service to fight the battle. That doesn't stop. That continues there. So yes, he had the heart of a father, of a devotee, and that definitely manifested those emotions, but did not bewilder him, did not take him away from his service.
Wonderful explanation, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so if there are no more questions, we can go to verse 44.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Go.
Text 41, where you talked about the 4 explanations to bird and the nest. I was just curious. I was looking at the Purva Swadhyaya, the weekend, and there was a question on that particular verse about Ganga and Bhagavad Gita. The question was, what are they considered to be? Sorry, this is a little off compared to the discussion here, but I'm wondering what do we bring in our own understanding to those questions in the Purva Swadhyaya, or because it
What
you
was the
spoke about
What
the
was the
question
question?
was, what are the river Ganges and Bhagavad Gita considered to be? You did explain Ganga and the Gita, and the Vedas are like the the birds which ultimately fly to the nest. And
so the Ganga and the Gita come in a different category. So we had talked about devotees coming to Krishna
yes,
and getting his mercy.
Mhm.
The Ganga and the Gita are part of Krishna's outreach program. So for those who don't come to him, he goes to them. Prabhupada mentions in the purport that they're manifestation of his mercy. Even those who come to him, he has mercy, but they're manifestation of his extreme mercy. That you don't have a strong desire to go to Krishna, but there is Ganges flowing in your backyard and you take a bath over there, or you get a copy of Bhagavad Gita and read it, and that is as good as you taking eventual shelter of the lotus feet. So it's mercy and even more mercy.
Got it. You did mention this point, yes, of outreach. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, so we were at verse 44. Yat sanubandhe sati dehagehe mama mitya udadura granam pumsham suduram vasato pipurya bhaje matatte bhagavan padabjam. O Lord, persons who are entangled by undesirable eagerness for the temporary body and kinsman, and who are bound by thoughts of mine and I, are unable to see your lotus feet. Although your lotus feet are situated within their own bodies, but let us take shelter of your lotus feet. So in 4 verses, from 44 to 47, the Devas will describe about the relationship between the Jivas and the lotus feet of the Lord. So 2 verses, 44 and 45, will describe those who do not take shelter. And then 2 verses, 46 and 47, will describe that who do take shelter. So this verse, it reflects the philosophy of aham mameti, mine and I, aham mameti, the conception of I am everything, aham, and everything belongs to me, mameti. And of the two, the first is more difficult to overcome. It's a little counterintuitive because you would think that we want to possess everything. That's a deeper conception. But Prabhupada and Acharyas, they mentioned that the aham, the I am everything, is very difficult to overcome. So between the two, aham mameti, the illusion is so pervasive that even though the Lord is present right there in the body, Puryam reflects as is present in the body, how? As Paramatma. But they are still not able to see him. Or Puryam can also refer to city like Dwarka and Mathura. So then this is understood that even the Lord personally came to Puryam, to various places like Dwarka, Mathura, and Vrindavan, and then did his Leelas. And even then, the people are engrossed in aham mameti. So the Devas say that, but let us take shelter of the lotus. So they say that let us not follow those who have this mentality. We will take shelter of the lotus. So they separate themselves from those who have this conception. Verse 45. Tanvai hayasad vritibhir akshbhirye pararantar manasa paresha atho na pashanti urugayanunam yete padanyasa vilasa lakshaya. O great Supreme Lord, offensive persons whose internal vision has been too affected by external materialistic activities cannot see your lotus feet, but they are seen by your pure devotees, whose one and only aim is to transcendently enjoy your activities. So after the previous verse, one may object that you cannot blame a person for not able to see the Lord as Paramatma, because he is very subtle and difficult to see. Person can say, I cannot even see the Atma. How can you expect me to say the Paramatma? So the Devas are saying, fine. If you cannot see the Lord, you see the devotees of the Lord. They are existing on the same plane as you are. And then they say, but no, there are people who will not even take shelter or inspiration from the devotees. And they give three reasons. They say, Vritibhi, because they're influenced by the external energy. Akshibi, they're engrossed in the senses. And Asat, they are too materialistic. So one can join these reasons and say that those who are influenced by the external energy become too engrossed in their senses, and thus they become materialistic. Or one can say that each one of these three in itself can cause spiritual blindness. So because of this, na pashyant, they are not able to see the devotees of the Lord. Now, how do the devotees react to this? So the Devas mention that, but the devotees lakshyaha, they see them. So this means that even though they do not see, means they don't acknowledge the devotees still try to reach out to them and out of compassion change them. Or it could be understood that even though they don't see the devotees see them for who they are and avoid them. Or it could be understood as that these people are only seeing matter and not spirit. But the devotees see spirit. So, vilas padanyasa. So they enjoy the activities of the Lord. And Srila Prabhupada, in his mood of being a preacher, he elaborates on the first understanding, which is actually the most prominent understanding, that even though these people, the materialists, don't see the devotees see them. Prabhupada gives the example of Narad and Mrigarari. That Mrigarari had no interest, but Narad saw him, and out of compassion, he changed them. So Prabhupada says that the Lord's devotees continue to bestow the blessings of devotion upon all such offenders without hesitation. This is the nature of devotees. Jiva Goswami comments on this verse that the great souls give mercy to those who do not commit offenses. So he answers an implicit question that if the devotees are seeing them, then why is everybody not getting liberated? So Jiva Goswami puts certain conditionality, saying that the great souls give mercy to those who do not commit offenses. Simply by the association of these great souls, materialistic men also become saints. Because great souls are independent, they may also offer mercy to offenders and this transform them into devotees. Such a transformation cannot occur without a great soul's mercy. Vishwanath Chakravarti quotes the Bhagavatam, 10th canto, and the verse says that 10th canto, 51st chapter, verse 53, that when the material life of a wandering soul has ceased, O Achyuta, he may attain the association of your devotees. So he picks upon this verse because the verse seems to talk about putting the effect before the cause. So generally you would say that when they attain the association of your devotees, then the material life ends. But this verse says when the material life has ceased, then they may attain the association of your devotee. And the explanation given by both Vishwanath Chakravarti and Jiva Goswami is that this verse is deliberately spoken in this way to indicate that the effect and the cause are almost simultaneous. So it's like when there is lightning, then light and sound are simultaneous. Difficult to say which one comes first. So the association of the devotees is so potent that as soon as it happens, the material life begins to end. So in these set of verses, there are 6 references to the lotus feet of Krishna. And as I mentioned, that sometimes either you may have to make a presentation about the potency of the lotus feet of Lord or write an essay on it. Then these set of verses are generally quoted from verse 39 to 44. 39, yat mulake taha, the soles of the lotus feet. Verse 40, tavangri chayam, the shade of your lotus feet. 41, tirthapada, the places of pilgrimage at the lotus feet. Then angari saroj pitham, in verse 42, sanctuary of the lotus feet. 43 is padambujam, which is lotus feet. And 44, padabjam, which is again lotus feet. 6 references made in these set of 6 verses. Okay, so we'll do 2 more verses and then we'll stop for any discussion. Verse 46. Panena te deva katha sudhayaha pravratta bhaktiya vishadasayaye vairagyasaram pratilabhya bodham yathanjashnaviyo rakuntadishnyam. O Lord, persons who, because of their serious attitude, attain the stage of enlightened devotional service, achieve the complete meaning of renunciation and knowledge, and attain the Vaikuntha Lok in the spiritual sky simply by drinking the nectar of your topics. So the previous 2 verses spoke about those who do not take shelter of the Lord or his devotees. These 2 verses, 46 and 47, will speak about those who take. And the subject is very similar to a previous verse that I had spoken about, how Gyan and Vairagya, they automatically appear when one takes shelter of Krishna. So those who are Gyanis and Yogis, they have to conquer the modes of nature either through knowledge or through renunciation. But devotees, they don't have to undertake this painful process. Just by practicing bhakti, Gyan and Vairagya automatically manifest. So the question is that why do the demigods consider Gyan and Yoga or Vairagya to be painful? Because even these people are aspiring transcendentalists. So the explanation that is given, and I'll give it briefly because you're all familiar with it, is that those who practice Gyan and who practice transcendence through Gyan and Vairagya are doing it by abstaining their senses from the sense objects. And because it's the nature of the senses to engage, then even if they acquire some level of perfection, they will ultimately have to come back to bhakti. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that, but they often become bored with such philosophy and eventually take to hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So the idea is that the nature of the mind, the senses, is to be active. And when these are actively engaged, so Vairagya Sharam. Vairagya Sharam is the essence of renunciation and Bodham. Bodham is intelligence that is aligned to Krishna. So these both are easily available through the process of bhakti, which the demigods say is based on panena. Panena means drinking. Shudhayat, the pure nectar of Devakatha. Devakatha means Krishna Katha. And Maitreya, he says that such persons are well, actually the Devas, they say that such persons are pravrad. They are highly enlightened. And what is the destination? The destination is Akuntha Dishnayam. Akuntha is another name for Vaikuntha. So Kuntha means suffering. So Vaikuntha means without suffering, and Akuntha means the same thing. And Dishnayam means in the spiritual sky. Verse 47. Tatha pare chatma samadhi yoga balena jitva prakritim balistham tvameva dhiraha purusham vishanti tesham shramaha shanatu sevayate. Others who are pacified by means of transcendental self-realization and have conquered over the modes of nature by dint of strong power and knowledge also enter into you. But for them, there is much pain. Whereas the devotees simply discharge devotional service and thus feels no pain. So the verse is restating the superiority over bhakti, of bhakti, over all other processes like Jnana, Vairagya or Astang. So those who follow Jnana or Vairagya, they may attain Sahaj Mukti after a lot of endeavor and pain. But the devotees, they experience happiness during the process and after the process. So in Astang Yoga, we know the person has to perform so many austerities, give trouble to the body to get that sense of detachment. In Gyan Yoga, control the mind, control the senses, neti, neti, neti. So the process is troublesome. And the destination is Sahaj Mukti, which is even more troublesome because Shunya, senses have nowhere to interact. But for the devotees, both the process and the destination is joyful. So one may argue that how can you say that the process is enjoyable for the devotees? Because for them also there is a lot of labor in performing sadhana bhakti, because it is not in their swabhav, being conditioned souls. And Prabhupada says that yes, that is true, there is labor, but there is immediate compensation for that labor because of transcendental pleasure. So even though practicing devotees endeavor to perform bhakti, but they also begin to enjoy the fruits of the bhakti right away. So a person who takes to bhakti may say that from now onwards, I will not eat, or if he was, he will say, now onwards, I will not eat meat. I have given up eating meat. So some amount of endeavor, controlling of the tongue. But there is immediate compensation that you get access to prasadam, mahaprasadam. Okay, you can start enjoying so that your tongue never misses that. You give up the association of non-devotees and you say, oh, I have so many friends, they were close friends, I've given it up. But immediate compensation. You're part of Vasudeva Kutumba, the family of Krishna. And Vishwanath Chakravarti makes the point that even the Jnanis and the Yogis, they also have to rely on bhakti to attain Sahaja. Because without bhakti, one cannot make any forms of advancement. It's just that bhakti is a supporting anga over there. Okay. So let me stop here and see if you have any discussions.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, you mentioned the 6 references to the lotus feet of the Lord, right, Prabhuji? Each verse 1 point, like Padambujam, like that you mentioned. So, is there any notes, Prabhuji? Because I went through the document that Prem Prashad Prabhu shared, but I couldn't see that. So,
I didn't put that in the notes, but I can read it to you again if you want, or you can replay. You can replay the discussion and hear it over there.
I'll do that, Prabhuji. And Prabhuji, one more question, Prabhuji. You mentioned for devotees there is an immediate compensation, and because of devotional process also that we can relate that our kirtan is very pleasurable, and so we can relate. But for non-devotees, like impersonalists, when they do sadhana, like even they get some happiness, right, Prabhuji? Because without happiness, no one can sustain anything for long. And even I was doing meditation before coming our practice, that there was some piece of more balance kind of thing. So
part of it is, I think, so you're right. There is something that drives people to do yoga or pursue jnana. But the understanding here is on a relative scale. That you do meditation, you get some happiness, and it compensates for the difficulties that you're doing, and the compensation that you get from bhakti is a lot more. Right? That's why you see people, they take to it. And even before I came to Krishna consciousness, I was doing meditation for a long time, and it was difficult to sustain. I would do it for a while. And yeah, there was some attraction in doing it, but then I would stop and then I would do it again. I would almost force myself to do it again. But when you come to devotion, to bhakti, then the process is natural. It just takes you along with it. You enjoy with devotees. We have deities to to serve, prasadam to enjoy. So there are so many avenues by which it just becomes, on a relative scale, on a more fulfilling experience.
Definitely, Prabhuji. That is true, because initial days I was eating more prasadam and maybe 1 or 2 rounds chanting slowly, that too, like that. So it's more slowly we increased. So
Yeah.
So
Prabhu? Yes, the process of negation is more difficult than include thing. I think this is the relishment that we have in bhakti. We replace with higher taste.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Verse 48. I'm going to try and see if I can finish the chapter. Tatte vayam loka shishrakashyadya tvaya anushastas tribhiratmabhisma sarve vyuktaha swavihara-tantram sashaknamastat pratihartavete. O original person, we are therefore but yours only. Although we are your creatures, we are born one after another under the influence of the 3 modes of nature. And for this reason, we are separated in action. Therefore, after the creation, we could not act concertedly for your transcendental pleasure. So in the concluding 4 verses, the Devas will pray to Krishna for empowerment. So after glorifying the unparalleled shelter of Krishna's lotus feet and equating it with bhakti, devotional service, and calling those who do not take shelter as unfortunate, the Devas, they now shift their prayers to a request. So this is the general mood. We have seen that several times, that before somebody asks for something, it is always preceded by some kind of prayers for glorification. So now the Devas are putting forward their request. So what is the request? That we would like to serve you, but we are unable to serve you because we are conditioned by the 3 modes of material nature. Which is why after the creation, we are not able to act for your pleasure. Now, Krishna's pleasure at this point is the creation of the material universe. But they're saying, please tell us that what we and other living entities can do to be able to serve you. And Prabhupada mentions that this cosmic creation is working under the influence of the 3 modes of the external potency of the Lord. Different creatures are also under the same influence, and therefore they cannot act concertedly in satisfying the Lord. Because of this diverse activity, there cannot be any harmony in the material world. The best policy, therefore, is to act for the sake of the Lord. That will bring about desired harmony. Okay. Next verse. Yavad balim te jaharam kale yatha vayam chanam padamayatra yatho bhaye shamta ime hiloka balin haranto anammadantyanubaha. O unborn one, please enlighten us regarding the ways and means by which we can offer you all enjoyable grains and commodities, so that both we and all other living entities in this world can maintain ourselves without disturbance and can easily accumulate the necessities of life, both for you and for ourselves. So after all these prayers, Krishna may ask them that, what can I do for you? So they've responded by asking for the knowledge to create a universe where the conditioned souls can enjoy their material senses and make spiritual advancements. So specifically, they are asking for knowledge for the following aspects. So referring to the activities of Visarga, the Devas want to know that how can we construct this universe filled with planets and living entities? Then acknowledging the fact that they are functions of Krishna's Maya Shakti, they seek sustenance for themselves and others. So Imeloka. So Imeloka means food. That food for the body and food for the senses. So something for us to eat and something for us to enjoy and for others. Then they want to establish the process of yajna. They want to establish the process of karma and gyan by which the jivas can enjoy the respective results. I'm sorry, the third is they want to establish the process of gyan and karma by which the jivas can enjoy the respective results. And then lastly, they want to establish the process of yajna by which the jivas can perform worship of the Lord. So, so this mood of the devas, it demonstrates complete dependence and also demonstrates ongoing dependence. Because when they're asking for food, they're also asking for the ability to offer that food to Krishna. So it's not a dependence at the time of creation only, that the Krishna pushes the button and walks away, but the dependence is at each and every moment. Okay, next verse. Tvam naha shuranam asi sanvayanam kutastadayaha purusha purana tvam deva shaktyan gunakarmayonao retas tvajayan kavin adadheja. You are the original personal founder of all the demigods and the others of different gradations. Yet you are the oldest and are unchanged. O Lord, you have no source or superior. You have impregnated the external energy with the semen of the total living entities. Yet you are unborn. So, previous verse, the Devas had placed a list of demands before Krishna. Now they clarify that they're only asking for this as a servant will ask to a master. So before putting the demands, they had again clarified that the only reason we are asking what we will ask is so that we can serve you. And this verse, after placing the demands, they are making the same point that we are fully dependent on you. So if you so desire, you can fulfill our requests so that we can serve you. So the Devas summarize their relationship with Krishna. Prabhupada says that Sa Anvayanam means with different gradations. So everybody is dependent, whether the person is asura or asura. So how is the relationship summarized by the devas? So they first talk about Krishna. So they say you're kutastha. Kutastha means that you're without change, which means that he is the original cause, the very first person. He is the Purusha, controller. He is Adya, without a superior, the most superior. He is Purana, the ancient one, and he is Aja, unborn. So Krishna is the most ancient, unchanging cause and controller. He is the one who creates the universe and impregnates it with the jivas. Thus, the devas are saying that, please allow us to serve you like a son serves the father. So Prabhupada mentions that sometimes in love, the son is more than the father. But the relationship of the father and the son will always be of superior and inferior. Okay, next verse, last verse of the chapter, 51. Tato vayam mat pramokhayadarte babu vimatvam karvam kim te swam naha swa chakshu pradedi shakya Deva Kriyarthe Yad Anugranam. O Supreme Self, please give us, who are created in the beginning from the Mahatattva, the total cosmic energy, your kind directions, and how we shall act. Kindly award us your perfect knowledge and potency so that we can render you service in the different departments of subsequent creation. So this is the second time the jivas, they refer indirectly to their position, that we were created in the beginning from the Matattva. And in the Krama Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami says that these devas of the elements are devotees of the Lord, and because of the devotion, had bodies spontaneously constructed by the Lord. The prayer is for the construction of other bodies. So they pray that how are we, the elements headed by Mahatattva, they say Mat Pramukha, to carry out your creation. So Pradedi Shaktiya. So please give us the power and Anugrahana and your mercy. And so Prabhupada in the purport, he talks about what is Swachakshu, what is the personal plan of the Lord. And then he says his personal plan is that the conditioned jivas who are averse to him, he impregnates them. And the plan is to give the conditioned souls who desire it a chance to enjoy sense gratification. But then Krishna has another plan also, which is to help them realize that they are created for transcendental sense gratification of the Lord and not for individual sense gratification. This is the constitutional position of the living entities. Okay, this is the end of this chapter, and this is the end of this verse. So I'll pause here and see if there's any discussion.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, quick question on the verse before the prayers. I think it's verse 46 where they're saying that you know they're talking about the devotees and non-devotees, right? So they're saying that because of persons, because of their serious attitude, attain the stage of enlightened devotional service. So serious attitude, like uh, does that mean sincerity, consistency, or what exactly does that attitude, like serious attitude, mean?
Okay, just let me look at the verse. Good question. So the close, there's no direct explanation for the serious attitude. The closest that it comes is where it is said that by practicing devotional service, Vaishnavas achieve greater results than the yogis. So it probably refers to devotional service. And if you look at the word to word, it's Bhaktya Vishad Asaya. So it's by devotional service with a greatly serious attitude. So basically sincerity in executing bhakti.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, so there are no more questions. We'll stop.
Prabhuji, one question, Prabhuji. Like this whole discussion came when Vidura asks questions to Maitreya. He initially explained the creation Mahatattva and then modes, and then came to the Deva's prayers to the Lord. So because in one of the verse you mentioned that like even they are not mentioning even Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara, but only the Supreme Lord as Krishna. So the is there any point that it was mentioned it is directed towards Krishna or Mahavishnu, just for the sake of knowing? I'm asking Prabhuji, if possible, can you clarify? Like.
So the prayers of the demigods, so at every point, right, they keep saying, let's take shelter of your lotus feet and Padambuja. So all those verses, they're directed at Krishna. And Vishwanath Chakravarti also makes this point that the Devas are also, even though at that point, there is no Brahma, there is no Shiva, there are no devotees, there are no non-devotees there. But the Devas are praying. So at that point, there is just Devas and Krishna. So they are praying to Krishna because they are also imbued with the knowledge of what will happen in the future. So with that understanding also, they're praying to Krishna. That there will be some people who will take shelter of you, some people who will not take shelter of you. So they're not talking about the past or the present, they're talking about the future. So at that point, there is just the Devas and Krishna.
So Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan, right, Prabhuji, not Mahavishnu.
Do you care? Does it make a big difference to you?
No, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we can stop here. Vancha kalpatarubhayasya kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anant Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Thai Gaur Premanand. So for the subsequent classes, if you can keep the document with you, and that way I can do the verses quickly because I've summarized a lot of verses in tables and charts. And I think we missed to some extent the sweetness of reading each and every verse. I definitely enjoy it. But I think also in the interest of time, if we compress it, it's easier to understand. So do keep the document along with you. Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol.